So it's not, it's your friend, actually. I don't like that it's called not self-theme because it's very much part of all of ourselves. We're emotional creatures. And so when you have that theme of anger, you're out of alignment. Something's wrong. You're probably violating yourself. It's by allowing others to violate you or certain situations to violate you, or you're not looking out for your time or your rest. Something's off kilter that needs to be addressed.
Welcome to Conversation for the Soul. I'm Linda Christine. Today, I had a conversation with April Novoa, and April is an incredible master at human design and I would say an expert at gene keys, at gene keys as well. Um, what I'm going to recommend to everybody before they watch this episode, go online and go to, I believe it's genekeys.com. Yes, genekeys.com, and download your Gene Keys profile for free. And then do a search for human design chart for free and get that too. And then you can kind of follow along and learn a little bit about yourself as I have this amazing conversation with April today. I really hope you enjoy it. Welcome, April. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me on today, Linda. I'm thrilled and honored to be your guest today.
So I always like to ask everybody how they got started on, and I'm just going to qualify the hammering. We have remodeling going on in our house, so sorry for any noise distractions. How did you get started on your consciousness journey? What led you in down the path of human design and gene keys?
Well, my consciousness journey was probably about 5 years prior to my finding human design. And my consciousness journey, not unlike a lot of other people, was I guess just found in having tried and done everything and kind of coming to a dead end and having one morning where I kind of had this feeling come over me that of being just fully present, like being fully present in my body. I was going through a lot at the time, raising a mentally ill child. I adopted and fostered children, and I had one that was really having a lot of problems, and I was having a lot of anxiety from it, and I would find myself like shaking all day, even after we would get him to school. And then just all like not sleeping. I think I went 10 years of just total insomnia all the time. And there was this one morning that he had left. I got him on the bus, and I was sitting in my kitchen, and I noticed my body was just kind of, tremoring and shaking. And it occurred to me that I wasn't, that moment was not what had happened, and it was not what was going to happen. That I didn't have to live perpetually in the past or the future, that I could be, it was a moment of just knowing that I was fully here now. And it was such a moment of bliss that overtook my body and relaxation and peace. And uh, that was, I think, I would call that kind of my awakening. And after that, I kind of left. I discovered meditation. I started meditating. And started seeing some things, left organized religion, and was just on this quest, this search for truth, for understanding reality. And, went to all different kinds of events and things, met a lot of people. I'm a researcher by nature. So, just delve in deeply into Alan Watts and like all these people I'd never heard of before. And I had opened up a wellness center, and this is where the human design comes in. And so I'm trying to encapsulate 5 years in a couple minutes, which is really hard because there's a lot of stuff there. Um, but as far as human design is concerned, I would listen to podcasts, and I was on my way to my office at a wellness center that I had opened up with a few other people, and I heard someone talking about human design, and she was describing the 5 different aura types. And I was listening, and I was intrigued. I thought, well, this is really interesting because it was like explaining how your energy interacts with the world and how their energy, other people's energy interacts with you, and how it's different for different people. And I had always felt that. I always felt very different, from the time I was a little girl, that my energy impacted people in ways that I didn't necessarily intend. It just kind of did. And she was describing the manifester. And And I'm like, oh, I'm definitely not that. Like, I don't want to be that person. Because it was this closed aura and it was intense and impactful. And I got to my office and I thought, well, I'm just going to run this chart just to see, and I'll be darned if I wasn't that. So, but I had a bit of an adversarial relationship with that type. But as I read into it, it read my mail, and I knew that for sure that's what I was, and that I could learn to work with it that would be more aligned, be more integrated, and use my strengths for the highest good, and and then also depersonalize kind of how my energy was received. That when it's being received in a correct way in the correct situation, it's really wonderful and it's awesome. But if I'm trying to force something or make something happen, it can be quite uncomfortable for me and for other people. So I learned to work with it. And I had had so much burnout in my life, and this was just easier. It was just easier living life authentically as who I was and accepting those parts of me that I had maybe not been too friendly towards. So that's the short story of how I found human design.
Wow. So, okay, so if you're like me, as soon as you discover this stuff, did you put your son in there, and did you have a partner at the time? Did you put them in there, and were you able to start unfolding some of the dynamics, and
Oh,
what did
yes.
you find?
Well, I started putting everybody I knew in there. But I also knew, as I learned, that my channels are projected, which means that if I'm invited to share something, then it's correct. But if someone's, not on board, so I kind of kept that to myself for a while. I kind of just guarded it and kept it to myself. But I did want to understand how our relationship worked or maybe didn't work like they were supposed to. So I started looking at the mechanics of the energetic mechanics between us in groups. And, I was intrigued. And some people that I approached with it that were close to me, they were generally interested and, and I would be able to kind of, I guess, practice, before I got my education with them. But I never, forced it on anybody. But it did give me a lot of insight as to who they were, and but most importantly, as to who I am, because that's what I'm working with. I'm working with my own energy, and that's really the only thing that I can really have any kind of agency about is my own energy.
Is your challenged son, is he your only child?
No, I have four children.
Oh my gosh, lady,
I
you're
know.
busy.
I have two biological children and two adopted children. And I've been married for 35 years to my husband.
Oh.
And yeah, so no, he's no longer he's an adult now, and he's off on his own. So, but it was a very challenging situation. Our foster care system is not a great place to spend time in, and not to be negative or anything, but that is something that we really need to pay attention to because it really can damage children. I mean, children are made to bond with one or two primary caregivers, and when they are constantly moved from place to place to place, it is damaging to them. So, yeah, so I could talk a lot about reactive attachment disorder, oppositional defiant disorder, ADHD. We could spend an entire hour talking about that.
Mm.
But and most people are very ill-equipped to handle it. And of course, I found I was too. Love is great, but there's something more needed when you're fostering children that have emotional problems.
Well, you and I have more in common than I ever imagined.
Really?
I'm sure Millie knew this. Well, not as far as adopting, but I know oppositional defiant disorder. I know ADHD. I know ADD. My oldest son went through some major struggles during my divorce, and
Mm,
that kind of escalated that whole situation. And yeah, if I knew now what if I knew then what I know now,
I know.
I would have raised him so differently. But he's a wonderful man now, and
Yes.
he's
Yeah.
successful and has found his place. And yeah, but wow, what a struggle. What a huge
Yeah.
struggle.
I really thought, at the time I was very into Christianity. I have an ordained, I worked in ministry, and I really thought that religion could solve things during that time. And that was a big part of it was also a learning process in all this that what I really needed was to look within. And that began my journey because, everything outside of me had failed. And so there was nowhere else to turn, really. But it was the best possible outcome, for me. I mean, I will tell anybody and everybody that ever hears even a part of my story that these situations and him in particular, one of my greatest teachers ever, I really, really learned a lot about myself, and it really kind of motivated me to start that inward journey, to really try to understand myself and to understand myself in context of the world too. So it was a big, big thing for me.
And then you try to bring up these very different humans in the way our society is structured now, and you start to see all of the shortcomings and
Yeah.
all of the dysfunction. And yeah, I'm just calling it like it is. I don't
Yeah.
think I'm being negative. Um,
No.
and yeah, I wish I could have homeschooled my kids, but I was the bread earner in the family, and I was working at a corporate job, and my ex-husband actually agreed to stay home with the kids. And
Yeah.
that was, he was probably not the best person to be doing that either.
Well,
So, it's huge lessons.
there's a lot of lessons. I think the reason human design resonated so deeply is I had a lot of conditioning. I had, and we all do. From the time we're little babies, and really, truly, we're all doing the best we can with what we've got. But if you're looking to the outside, whether that be our culture, society, family, religion, government, whatever it is, you're looking for all of those things to lead, guide, and direct you. uh, they can't, if anything, they condition you away from who you truly are. And when we're really tapped in to who we are and we get in touch with our intuition, we get in touch with that inner knowing on the inside of us, and we learn how to pay attention and to be directed by it, I feel like life's, is so much smoother. But I didn't know that back then. And I was just doing the best with what I could, and you were doing the best with what you could. And we all are. I mean, human beings, David Hawkins, in one of his books, I think it's versus Force, talks about human beings being so innocent because we really, until we awaken, until we have that drive to push away that which has conditioned us to be something other than who we are and really tap into our own essence, we are very subject to everything around us. And there's so many confusing messages all the time, you know, uh, diet, for example, what do you eat? Well, you eat what's right for you, but there's a million books that tell you what you should and should not do. And that might have been right for that person, but is it right for you? And so human design is the science of differentiation, of individuation. That is understanding yourself deeply so that you can navigate your life skillfully. That is what it's all about at its essence. And there's a lot of parts to it. But I always tell people when you're starting out with human design, really just start small. Start with your type and strategy and authority. And then if you want to go deeper into lines and channels and gates and incarnation cross and all those other parts of it, do that. It's the how do you eat an elephant thing, one bite at a time.
And then Gene Keys dovetails with human design, correct?
Correct.
Was it happenstance that they both kind of fit together, or was that cha-
Well,
Richard?
it's a Richard Rudd. It's a
Yeah.
unique he channeled the Gene Keys. But he knew Ra Uru, who was the founder of human design, and he was a student of his, and he even had a center in England where he taught human design. But he had his own, one day he had like this 3 day uh, download where he received the gene keys. The commonality between the two is the I Ching, There's also astrology, and then there's other different parts of it, but that's what they share is the I Ching and astrology. And what Richard brought to this equation was something that I think is on a soul level extremely deep and healing. To me, I look at the gene keys as probably one of the most gentlest form of shadow integration work on the face of the planet. It's extremely gentle. It is about holding things with awareness and pivoting as you have that awareness because we can't fix what we don't see. So it introduces things like the three different frequencies. We call them frequency bands, a shadow frequency, a gift frequency, which is, by the way, in the shadow. That's why we have to embrace our shadows. We have to embrace all the parts of ourselves, even the hurting parts, because that gift is found in the shadow. And then the city, which is the divine expression that comes through people. So it's very poetic. It's very, it reads very, I don't really have a term for it, but it really touches you. And I kept running into on my human design journey after I got my training as a human design specialist, I kept running into his writings and I would just, I mean, it was like he was reading my mail, it was like, wow, this is speaking to me on such a deep level. And so I kind of married the two. There are folks that only do human design, there are people that only do gene keys, but I see them as a perfect marriage. I see one as mechanics, human design, which is great. You got to know how your car works. It's important to know, how you change your oil or, or where the brake is. Those are important things to know. But gene keys, it's also extremely important to heal, you know, because even though you have a gift, say in human design, that gift could express in some not so great ways if it's vibrating at a lower frequency. And gene keys kind of addresses that. So that's kind of my simplified way of defining how they're the same and different.
That was so eloquently put, April. I love that. And I want this episode to try to appeal, and I'm going to share my screen right now so people can, those who maybe haven't dipped their toe in yet, can see what this is about. And this is my profile. I
Wow.
just grabbed the one right here. This is my human design, and this is my gene keys. Can you see it okay, April, or is it too small?
Yes, I can see it very well. You are a
I
manifester.
am. Hello, sister.
Hello, sister. Two Mannies. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, yeah. So
Okay.
go into simple terms, and then
Okay.
afterwards, I want you to give some golden nuggets for people to look for who have really been delving into this modality as well. So we can kind of, play to both sides of the coin for those that are
Sure.
new and those, because I'll tell you what, and we had this little discussion before we got on here today. Um, this whole thing here, I just look at that and my eyes roll back in my head and I'm like, I don't know what the heck this thing is, you
Yeah, it
know?
does look
And then
overwhelming.
manifester in the literal term is,
Yeah,
oh, I can make things happen and come to
right.
me.
Yeah,
But that's not really what
that's
it's
not
about.
really what that means. No. Well, first of all, there's five types, five major aura types. So it's very, very general. Generators are 36%. Then you have manifesting generators, which is kind of a hybrid between a generator and a manifester. Still has that defined sacral. So some people lump them together. They're about 35. And then you have projectors, which are about 20%. And then we manifestors are only about 9%. And then, which is very rare. And then the 1% is the reflector, which is the rarest one. And they have absolutely everything's white. They have no definition in their chart.
Wow. Have you met one?
Oh, yes, I've done readings for two of them. And my very first reading was with a reflector, uh,
Hmm.
which was kind of like a little confronting because she was reflecting me back to me. And that was really hard.
Oh,
But
wow.
but it was good because I did get to kind of see the way people receive me, because we don't see the way people receive us. So in your charts, those are the five types, okay? But there's a lot of nuance underneath that. So no two manifestors are going to be the same. No two generators, no two manifesting generators, no we're just talking aura, how the aura works, how the aura mechanics work.
No, and when you say aura, are you talking about the auric field?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So as manifestors, so I'm just going to talk real quick. The generator and the manifesting generator kind of have an enveloping, they responsive, they take in other people's auras, they take them in, they're constantly taking things in from around them. And the projector, it has a penetrating aura, so they're actually they kind of see into people.
Mm.
But the manifester, we have what's called a closed and repelling aura. And I did not like the way that sounded when I first heard it. However, what I have found is the manifester has an ability to push away what's not correct for it. Now, we might think of this sometimes as we're being rejected, but actually, what our aura is doing is it's protective because we're not for everybody. We are here to initiate powerfully in the world. And by the way that we make that go smoother, our strategy is to inform those around us. We're not here to ask for permission. We're not here to wait to respond like the generator and the manifesting generator. We're here to initiate. And in order to initiate, we need things out of our way. And so, what is blocking us, our aura just naturally kind of pushes away. So, that would be the strategy of the manifester. The authority is going to be different depending on the manifester. Yours is different from mine. Yours is your solar plexus. So, you have what's called emotional authority, you have an emotional wave. Okay. And that means that what is correct for you comes over time. It's
Where
not
are you
immediate.
finding that
Let me
information?
see. I'll move my. So here is the type manifester. Here's the strategy: inform before acting.
Oh, okay.
Give people a chance to either help you or move so that you can do what it is you need
Mm.
to do. And then the solar plexus, which is right here. Can you see my cursor?
No, I can't. I can,
Okay.
yeah, I'm sharing my screen, so that's all.
So the brown right triangle above is the solar plexus, and that happens to be your
That,
authority.
okay.
And so, as an emotional authority, time is your friend. So some other people who have different authorities can make decisions in the moment, and they should. You need to give it time until you have clarity after an emotional wave. If your wave is very high, it's not a good idea to make a decision. So, like for example, if you were to go to a dealership and you were on a high on your wave, and the salesman said, "Oh, you need to buy this car," you might buy it and then get it home and then have a lot of regret in a week or two
Mm.
because you made a decision in the height of your wave. Conversely, if you were in a low space on your wave and your friend called and said, in about a month we're going to go to Mexico, you want to come with? And you're like, no, because you're in a low place in your wave. I don't want to. You might regret it in a month when you see the pictures of them having a good time in Mexico. So the best way to use a solar plexus authority is when you're in a high or low on your wave is to tell people, I'm going to have to sit with that and get back to you. And wait till that waviness of the emotions is kind of in a calm space, and then you can make a decision that's correct for you. My authority is ego authority, or what we would call will. It's this little red triangle up here, and you have that defined as well. Um,
Oh, that's
but that
great.
is my authority, which means that I need to have a sounding board to hear the truth in my voice to know what is correct for me. So I literally have to talk it out, and a lot of times that's not possible for me. So I'll write it out, and I will find some truth in my voice that's not doesn't come from the mind. The mind is never the authority in human design. There is no truth in the mind. The
Hmm.
mind has lots of great questions, but very few solutions. Not really, not in terms of big decisions. The truth, our truth, everyone's truth is found in the body. And for you, it's found in the solar plexus. For me, it's found in my will.
So all these little shapes here, like these blocks and these diamonds and these triangles, people could have their authority in any of these sections.
No, there's
No.
only a few.
Okay.
The will is the red triangle. the emotional solar plexus, the one you have, is about 50% of the population, regardless of type. They can also have sacral authority, which is kind of it's a guttural knowing, which is the box that's the second to bottom right here. If you can,
This one
yeah,
here.
yep. And they can also have splenic authority, which is the triangle that is white on yours on the left side, correct?
Yeah. Okay.
So that is, if you have splenic authority, it's immediate. You need to trust your first impression because if you
Mm.
think about it, you're not going to have your perception can be tweaked by the mind. So for someone with, say, a splenic authority, truth is in the moment and only in the moment. So, and then the same is with the second box to the bottom, which is your sacral. That is an inner or an and it is only in the now as well. So time is kind of unique to the solar plexus authority, where time is their friend. The rest of us, that we have a weird relationship with time. But we can start from the top triangle, and I can go through each of the
Right here.
centers.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, let's do that. And then I'm really curious what all this stuff means
Okay.
too. But yeah,
Well,
let's you lead, April. We'll start here at the
okay.
top.
So up here at the top is the head. Okay, so in human design, you have in traditional Hindu belief, there's seven chakras. In human design, there's nine. There was a splitting of one at some point, creating nine, according to Ra. But the top one is the head. The second one down, the upside down triangle, the ajna, and then the square here in the throat, this is the throat, which is what makes us manifestors when that is defined and is connected to some sort of a motor. The middle one here is the G center. Okay. The one to the right of it is the will. And then further down, the brown triangle here is the emotional solar plexus. This square, second to the bottom, is the sacral. The one underneath it, the root. And then over here to the left is the spleen. So when you have definition, meaning those shapes are colored in, that's a true representation of who you are. It's called defined. So you're producing energy in those places. The places that are white, you're actually taking in energy from the outside. So you're being
Mm.
conditioned on the outside where your mind is concerned, your ajna, you're very open like myself. So you are taking in a good deal of energy from the outside. With an open head and ajna, you have the capacity to almost read minds. You might actually finish people's sentences. You kind of know what they're going to say before they say it. With the open G center, the one smack dab in the middle here, you're taking an identity. You can kind of be a chameleon wherever you go. You can blend with people. But your environment is extremely important because you can become your environment. So where you live needs to feel comfortable to you. Whom you're around needs to feel comfortable to you. Your spleen being open means that you have the capacity to almost be like a medical intuitive. You will take on the discomfort or dis-ease of other people and feel what they're feeling. If my knee is sore and we're sitting next to each other, you may start to have a sore knee, but there's nothing wrong with your knee. You're just taking in what's going on with me. Your sacral is undefined, which means you take in the life force energy from others. You're not making it. You're not really here to work. You're here more to initiate, more to lead. So the sacral being the square, the second one from the bottom, is open for you. So you need a lot of rest. It's really important. You can get burnt out. Being around a lot of people that have that defined for you can feel like a shot of caffeine, and you can work really, really hard, but you're riding on their energy. So you need kind of time of solitude, of rest. You need to make sure you get enough sleep. It's even wise for you to sleep alone if you can, so that you can be in your own aura. And then the root is also open here at the bottom, which means also that you have a tendency to get burned out. So you really have to be kind of like very much guarded about what you commit to because you can easily overcommit.
Now, I don't want this to be all about me. So,
Okay.
what if could some people have a lot of these boxes lit up at the same time? And if they see that,
Yes.
what happens?
So I've seen people with completely defined chart. Only one in the years that I've been doing this. I've only seen one, and they were a manifesting generator, and that just means that they're not really taking in energy from outside of themselves. They're producing it within. It doesn't mean that they can't be empathetic or understanding or anything like that. It just means that all of those centers are producing their own energy, independent from outside. That a person like that's probably not easily taking on, not easily influenced per se. They're not as easily conditioned, in other words, but they still can be conditioned because, that's just part of the game here on Earth. We, try as we might to be individuals. We do get influenced. So I see a lot of different, generally non-sacral people, which are manifestors, projectors, and reflectors, are very open people, meaning they're taking in a lot and rest because they're not producing life force energy on their own all the time. They really do need to guard their rest time and have a good amount of solitude at times, just to kind of know who they are outside of everybody else.
Now, are the manifesting generators, are they a bigger part of the population? I can't remember the breakdown there.
They are about half of the generators that are out
Okay.
there. They are growing. I think I'm honestly seeing more manifesting generators than any other type. But statistically, from what I'm understanding from Jovian and from other organizations, they are still kind of at the 36 percentage, and that could have changed since I last checked. But population wise, they are half of those that have defined sacrals, which creates a defined, as a generator by definition, are manifesting generators, which means they have the defined throat. So that kind of gives them a little bit of more of initiating capacity, whereas just a generator who does not have a defined or does not have a motorized throat, um, they really do have that waiting. The universe is constantly bringing things to them to respond to, but they really need to respond to what comes to them as opposed to like forcing or making anything happen.
Okay. So not to get too carried away. This all stuff looks very complex. I guess that should be done. If somebody is interested in all of that, they should definitely get a reading with April to
Yes,
find out about all that. But this is the stuff I think right in here.
okay,
If you were to go online and pull up, you can get your free profile. You can sign
easy.
up for that. And how should people read this here when they
Okay,
pull
so
theirs up?
so we talked about type, strategy, and authority. We glossed over it a bit. So let's look at profile. Profile is like an archetype that we live out in our lives. It's like if you were in a movie and you had a role, this would be the character study that you would do, which would be the role model hermit. So the six comes from the personality or the mind, and it's usually kind of obvious to us. So your primary profile is that of a role model. And but the part that you may not know, or you probably know by now, because I think we kind of learn as time goes on, the other part of you is a hermit. So you have this cyclical, I don't know if I said that right. You have this cycle of being a role model, but then having to go off and kind of, discharge and relax and regroup as a hermit. And then you'll be called back out again to be the role model. And it kind of is a cycle. So my best friend she's a 2/4. So she's a primary hermit. And she'll just disappear sometimes. And we've been friends for, gosh, I don't know, like 18 years. And I just know that about her. So if I don't hear from her and it's just crickets, I know she's in kind of a hermit phase, and it's not personal, and I understand that. And so she'll go and do her hermit thing, and then we get back together, and and then she goes does her hermit thing, we get back together, and that's just kind of how the two functions. It's just they really need to break off sometimes and be on their own. But that's unconscious for you. It's in your body. It's your body that wants to be the hermit. So your physicality, your body, the design that the vehicle that you're in wants to hermit, whereas the mind wants to role model. So almost everybody has this kind of like push pull in their profile.
Now, what are some of the other numbers? What are they
So
like?
Well, there's the one is the investigator. That's the base of the hexagram, the very bottom in the I Ching, the number one. And in order for them to feel good about doing something, they really want a good, firm foundation before going forward. So sometimes this can trip them up because they can kind of be afraid that maybe I don't have enough information, so maybe I need to not move forward. Okay, so they want to investigate to understand foundation, and they're very good at it. I mean, if you ask a one anything about anything and they've researched it, they can give you all the details. Okay, so they're very good at it, but sometimes the downside is that they might not go forward. The two we talked about, which is the hermit. The three, which is what I am, is what's called the martyr. And I like the word experimenter better. But what happens with people that experiment, and I'm one of those people, is that it looks to the outside world like you're flaky because you're going in one direction and then something else gets your interest and you go in another direction and you're changing gears all the time. And we need to be grateful for martyrs because they're the reason we have inventions. They're willing to try and do new things. So that's the martyr. And then you have the four, which is what's called I call them a networker, but they're called the opportunist in human design. And these are your folks that know everybody and generally don't make a move unless they know somebody there. Everything's about connection for them. So if they get a job, they like to know someone that works there. If they move to a different town, they want to know somebody. So that their connections are very important to them. Then you have the five, which is my unconscious profile, which is the heretic. And this is a person that kind of they lead, but they also kind of will point out the truth. They're like the kid in the crowd that says the emperor is wearing no clothes. Okay, so and we need them. We need heretics. Boy, do we ever need them today.
Oh, yeah, we do.
And so that's my unconscious profile. I'm a 3-5. And then you have the six, which is the role model. And the six is interesting because they have a triphasic life. Until their Saturn return, they're a three, like me. They're experimenting all the time. And then after they've done that experimentation, they do what's called going up on the roof. And they will spend time just kind of being detached from life a little bit, trying to really articulate and integrate everything that they have learned. And then when they get to their Chiron return, they become the role model. So I think you're in the role model phase now, but you have three distinct phases in your life, and you're currently in the role model phase.
Wow, that totally makes sense. Okay, we'll go back here and let's see. Then we get down here to definition. Are there lots of different options for
Yes,
definition? Oh,
there
okay.
are a few. Yes. So you are single definition, which means all of your centers, the brown, the red, and the brown here are communicating. So what this does is you don't need necessarily to be around other people. You like to be around them, but they don't give you a sense of completeness. Now, if you had a split definition, you would actually draw people onto your fractal that would create channels for you that would give you a sense of completeness. The same goes for you know, triple split, quadruple split, uh, all those different types is they have more of a they're much more relational in terms of it's more of a need. For you, connection is more of a want. I'm also a single definition. So my energy is kind of complete. It's everything's talking to each other, which is great. It's great if it is, it's great if it's not, but that makes me pretty comfortable in my own aura.
Okay, and then this not
Not
self
so.
theme are there a lot of different ones for that too?
Yes, yes. For the manifester, it's anger. For the manifesting generator, it's frustration and anger. For the generator, it's not anger, frustration. For the projector, it's bitterness. And for the reflector, it's disappointment. For
So are these shadows for
what, no,
each?
not necessarily. I would look at them in terms of if you had a warning light on the dashboard of your car that was saying something's not aligned, something's not working well, that's what that would be. So when I'm angry, something needs to change. So it's not that they're not shadows, They just are part of the vehicle that lets me know that I'm out of alignment. If
So if
I
whoever has the frustrated one, when they're frustrated, it's time for them to step back and
Mhm.
see what they need to change.
Check your engine, see what's going on. Like something is off kilter, and so we need to bring that into balance. So it's not, it's your friend actually. I don't like that it's called not self-theme because it's very much part of all of ourselves. We're emotional creatures. And so the when you have that theme of anger, you're out of alignment. Something's wrong. You're probably violating yourself. It's
Mm.
by allowing others to violate you or certain situations to violate you, or you're not looking out for your time or your rest. Something's off kilter that needs to be addressed. And that's the same for frustration. It's the same for bitterness in the projector and the same for disappointment in the reflector.
Okay, then we have the signature, which is for me,
Peace.
peace.
Yes.
How many of those? Are there quite a few of those also?
Yes. For the manifesting generator and the generator, it's satisfaction. For the projector, it's success. And for the reflector, it's surprise. It's surprise. And so what that is, the signature is what you're here to experience when all is in alignment. So when you have that deep peace within as a manifester, everything's feeling very aligned for you. When that's shaken, okay, we've gotta, you know, tweak this somehow. Something's off. So it's not, so it's where we want to be ideally. And we live in the world on this gangster planet, and sometimes we're not gonna, have that peace. But we can work towards it by really noticing what's going on in our bodies. I mean, the anger for me, I don't know for you, but for as a manifester for me, is all over my body. I can feel it when it's coming up. And it's usually because I have transgressed my own boundaries somehow. And of course, and then the tendency is to project that on someone else. But I can correct that by saying, I'm not able to make it tonight. I have something I need to do. Or what you said was actually very hurtful to me. I can speak up for myself. I can communicate my feelings. Unfortunately, what happens with manifestors a lot, because especially female manifestors, because we're very conditioned to be the good girl and to never get angry, is that we repress it, repress it, repress it, and then it just explodes all over everybody. And that's why manifestors seem scary to people. It's not that they're mean or bad people. It's just they, especially women, have a lot of repressing going on because we're conditioned to believe that there's something wrong with feeling anger. It's not, it is your friend. It's telling you something is out of line.
Hmm. Wow. Okay, and then at the bottom here we have,
Okay.
is
So,
this pretty complex down here
I
or
wouldn't say
not
it's
so
very
much?
complex. I would
Okay.
have to pull yours up. There's a lot of incarnation crosses, and I can definitely send yours to you. But just
No,
to
no, that's
explain,
okay. But just to give people a brief overview of what that is,
so
because
if
yeah.
yeah, yeah. So if your movie had a plot line, okay, and it's your story, is what it is. It's what you're here to do. It is a description of what you're here to live out in your movie called life. So your particular cross is a left angle cross, and what I can tell about it right now, looking at it, is it's transpersonal. So it's not, you're not here dealing with your karma necessarily, you're dealing with a collective karma. So you're here actually for other people. Right angle crosses are more personal, left angle crosses are transpersonal. So yours is transpersonal being a left angle cross. I can tell you that much so far. But there's a lot of them, and it would not be a big deal for me to copy and paste it and send it to you. So I'll do
Oh,
that.
okay. Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
All right, now, how does all of this dovetail into our gene keys, which is this circle thing over here?
Okay. Well, so I just wrote down your cross real quick so I don't forget.
Oh,
Um,
thank you.
you're welcome. So the numbers that you see um, on both sides are also here. Like this is your sun, right? So you have the 63.6. Your personality is the 63.6. So many of these will correspond with these. All of these hexagrams are falling like here, the 63.6 is in the sun in your personality. So the day you were born, this was the activation, the hexagram in the I Ching that was activated, which was the 63. The point 6 gives it further nuance. That's the line. About 4 months prior to your birth in the sun is your unconscious design. Over here, the 26.2, this is where the sun was about 4 months prior. So a lot of these will coincide with what's here. The sun, you have different planets that represent each one of these. There are three what we call sequences. And so when I typically do classes or I do personal journeys with people, which if you do it one-on-one with me, it's about an 8-week commitment because we meet every other week and
Mm.
we will go over each of these spheres. And it's a contemplative work. So it's something that you read and you sit with and you contemplate. The green here is the activation sequence. The red here is the Venus sequence, and the blue is the pearl. The green are your 4 prime gifts. The red is all about your relationships and also the imprints from that you were born with, like karmic imprints, things you're here to live out.
So
Um,
real quick, is this different for everybody?
yes,
Everybody has different ones lit up with different colors.
yes,
Okay, okay,
yes, yeah.
interesting.
It's very unique depending on who you are. But let's look real quickly at your top one, which is the 63. And
And
this is,
that's the same though. I mean, it's this
mhm.
top one is life work for everybody,
No,
right?
that's just
No?
for you.
Oh,
Yeah,
huh.
this is extremely unique. I mean, some people might have the 63, but
No, no, no,
um,
but the top circle is life work and the number's going to be
yes,
different.
yes, the numbers are
Okay.
different, but every area here is the same. So
Okay,
for
so this
you,
is evolution for everybody, but the number's going to be different for everybody.
exactly,
Okay,
exactly.
let's just touch
Let's
upon the important ones here in a general way.
Okay, well, let's go over your life's work because that's the first one that you would actually really start to work with. Um, as you can see, there's three expressions of the 63, which the bottom, the shadow is doubt. But through inquiry, you go to truth. So inquiry is the gift. So when you're in the shadow of doubt, if you can begin to question, to ask questions, it actually, it can change the way this key expresses. But you can get lost in the space of doubt and really struggle with that. And then the 6 is the line, which is gives further nuance. It's when I talked about the lines, like in human design, that's the role model. We would see it archetypal as a teacher. So you have this teaching element. Through inquiry comes truth. So there's a lot of teaching here in this first one.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah. So the 64 down here in your evolution, confusion is the shadow. Through inspiration comes illumination.
Hmm.
Imagination comes illumination. So the 64, if when we feel confused, we can start to use our imagination, we can become illuminated. So each one of these spheres has a shadow, a gift, and a city. And you can see here you're doubling up your EQ, your emotional intelligence in the Venus sequence is the same as your life's work. So this is a very thematic inquiry is a very important thing in your life, asking questions.
Hmm. Maybe that's why I like doing the podcast.
Could be. Yeah. So, I mean, the Gene Keys is a contemplation and it takes time, unlike like human design, I can sit with someone and do a reading and I'm done in an hour and I give them a report and they can look back and refer to that. They can come back and ask questions if they want to. But generally speaking, that I've given them everything. With Gene Keys, it's an inward contemplation. So, how these shadows show up for you are going to be unique for you. We have a repressive shadow, we have a reactive shadow. All the shadows fall in the fear frequency. So, really, to put it simply, anywhere we have fear is where we're going to find shadows.
What kinds of things can these readings assist with? I mean, that's not really a great question. What I guess I'm getting at, if let's say you're struggling with something, maybe depression or something,
Mhm.
is there a way to start digging into these aspects of human design or gene keys or both to contemplate and figure out what might be causing that and how to shift that?
Yes. Now so I'm going to kind of give you a perspective from both. So as a manifester, okay, I dealt with a lot of depression that was directly related to interpersonal issues, how I felt oftentimes victimized. It was my perception of that. But I can now through awareness see that it's, you know, how I'm received is a lot of it hinges on how I connect my energy. So, for example, if I decide I'm going to do something, I'm just going to give you a quick story. Let's just say I'm in the kitchen and I'm cooking dinner and I realize we're out of salt. My husband has gone up to the shower, okay, and he's taken a shower. And as a manifester, I'm doing before I'm speaking or thinking. I'm already at it. So I'm off to the store to get salt. He comes down, wife gone, and he gets really upset with me. Now, if I was using my strategy to inform him that, oh, we're out of salt, I'm going to the store, which does not come natural to a manifester. We just do. But I've learned that I can create a lot less problems in relationships when I let people know what I'm going to do. Therefore, I don't get that, oh my gosh, what is she doing? Prickly response. And therefore, I'm not depressed, feeling bad about myself like I've done something wrong all the time. So, from a human design perspective, when I use my strategy in relating to other people, I find that my interactions are smoother. So I feel less, and I understand myself and I know how I am. And it's okay that this is who I am. I just have to be skillful about how I am. Okay. So I no longer feel like there's something inherently wrong with me because I keep disappointing people. I learn to work with my energy. I inform, let people know what I'm going to do, and do what it is I need to do. That's from the human design perspective. Depression. I have the first key, which the shadow is entropy, okay, which is kind of depressive, okay. But entropy is actually a prerequisite to creation. So I understand that when I have those low periods now, I can sit with that emotion and it will pass. But when I was in resistance to it, wondering what the heck's wrong with me? Why am I depressed all the, I'm actually amplifying it and lengthening the period that I have those cycles.
Mm.
When I understand that cycle is a part of my nature, because that's the number one, that number one key has an entropic process before creativity. I don't have to feel bad about that. And I can be fully accepting of those emotions and not regard them as an enemy because whatever we resist persists. So, from the gene keys side, I'm working with the shadow, embracing it, accepting it, allowing it, and it just kind of flows on through and it's over, it's done. From the human design perspective, I'm using my authority and understanding myself to interact in a way where I'm clear and I'm going to be understood. And therefore, I won't feel judged and I won't feel like there's something inherently wrong with me because I'm letting people know I am going to do this. And they're like, okay, it's okay. And I don't have to ask permission. I don't have to people please. That's what a lot of manifestors do in order to keep the peace. I don't have to do that. I simply just have to let people know what's going on, what I'm doing, and then I don't get the resistance from them. So in both cases, when I'm depressed, I'm feeling depressed, it's because there's a lot of resistance in my life, either from what I would consider influence, or on the inside of me. I hope that's
Wow.
helpful.
Yeah, so people can dig into this and they can find out why they behave the way they behave, and they can get tools for
Yes.
altering that. Simple, not complex, just simple tools. Like, yeah, who would have ever thought, I needed to let people know what I was doing? Because part of me is like, screw you, you don't need to know what
Yeah,
I'm doing.
exactly. Every manifestor everywhere feels that way. It's the only strategy that does not feel natural. And it doesn't, but
Mm-mm.
it does not. No manifestor I know says that's a great idea. I'm going to tell everybody what I'm doing. I mean, I sometimes I feel ridiculous. I'm going to the bathroom, but the rest of the types seem to respond very well to being told to being informed about what we're doing. They feel less unsettled by us because they can't read us very well because of our aura is closed. So if you have a creature in your life and you can't really read them, and then they just often do something, it can be a little bit disturbing for them. So for a manifester to inform, it really reduces the amount of resistance that we face in our lives, and thereby we feel better about ourselves. There is nothing wrong with anybody. It's just like you have a pitcher that's got a really powerful arm, but he keeps hitting people in the stands. He
Yeah.
just needs to get it into the catcher's glove. That's all. That's all it
Mm,
is.
mm. Helpful, so helpful. What trends have you been seeing with readings? Is that possible to discern, or like can you
I
see some sort of shift happening on the planet through your readings?
Yes, well, there is a prophetic side to both, and I don't even like to use the word prophetic. Prognostications in human design and gene keys. We have something coming up in 2027 called the Great Change in the gene keys and the Great Mutation in human design. So there's that piece of it that our energy, the way that we're configured, is going to be changing, is changing. We are evolving as a species. And it looks almost like devolving right now, but it's not. It's not. It's actually, whenever anything new is created, you have to have that in, like I mentioned before, that entropic process, that breaking down. And so that's what we're watching. And this definitely coincides with what Ross said. Maybe he said it a little bit more dystopian, whereas Richard Rudd comes across much more, I don't know, he has a broader perspective about the overall, the higher meaning of it all. But there is definitely something happening energetically on our planet and in individuals, specifically in their energy field, that's shifting. I do see more and more people. I see kind of a divide. There's people that really want to use this information to grow and evolve. And then there's other people that maybe you know, are really, I think, probably in a state of shock with everything that's occurred, that are kind of not really seeking self-knowledge as much. But the ones that are really seeking it, I see them start to actually work with the principles, which is very encouraging to me because some people in the past would get a reading and it's like, okay, that's good to know, and off they go with their lives. But I do see people kind of starting to really apply it because they're trying to find some sort of equilibrium in their life. They want the
Yeah.
peace, they want the satisfaction, they want to have success, they want to have surprise, they want to have all of those themes that we're here to experience.
So this is the great change is 2027, did you say?
That's correct. Yeah.
Wow.
That's,
Wow.
yeah.
So
But that,
so
it,
broadly, what does that entail?
well, it entails a global shifting of our consciousness, which is there's a lot of different ways people explain that. But they're all kind of pointing to the same thing that we are going to be evolving towards from Homo sapiens to Homo sanctus, a higher consciousness. But it's not going to happen overnight. It could really take thousands of years for us to attain that. But we're seeing that a lot of non-essentials are beginning to drop off. For me, it's going to be about the individual coming into human sovereignty and individuation and more cosmic consciousness as opposed to just me, myself, and I. I feel like we're moving out of that. At least a certain part of the populace is. I think there's another part of the populace that is like holding on to it for dear life, but there's a lot that is going to be changing. And it really entails bringing down a lot of the systems and structures that we're quite used to. It's a frequency band. We've been in something called the cross of planning in human design. We are going into in 27 into the cross of the rising phoenix, which is
Ooh,
a
that's beautiful.
whole, it is, or not rising phoenix, sleeping phoenix, but it's a whole different vibration. It's four different frequencies from what we're currently experiencing. So as the frequency changes, so we as humans, as creatures also shift. So there's just a lot of change coming up, and that all begins in 2027. But I feel like we are in the transition part of labor right now where it's crowning. and it's on its way. We're not going back to what was.
You can't stop it now. It's
It is coming out. You can't go home.
is human design or gene keys or both are they like astrology in a way where you can go, well, I can look at March and I can see things coming up in March and blah blah blah, or not really?
Well, it's usually not used that way. I mean, I will use it to look at the different, because every 6 days we go through, the sun moves into another gate or gene key, and that shifts the collective frequency, and it also shifts us in our body graphs. So that's what we call some sort of a transition phase where something, through the transits, things change. We change with the transits every 6 days. So when we're looking at your chart, for example, I'm looking at a foundation chart, but given what we've got the 19 right now in the sun, even if you don't have the 19, you have it now because the sun is in it and different planets are hitting into different gates. So we experience all the different gates and keys on a rotation. For the sun, it's every 6 to 7 days. For other planets, it depends on how quickly they're kind of moving through that I Ching wheel. And so, it's variable time wise, but everything is always changing, always shifting. And you can look ahead and see, okay, well, we were in the 41 and 2 weeks ago or a week ago, and now we're in the 19, and the flavor or the frequency has shifted. So if you want to use it, that's how I use it in terms of when I watch the news, I can see the 19. I can see the shadow of codependence. I can see what's going on in the world thematically. So I can use it that way. As far as projecting future events, we can also see that. We typically don't. Most of us who do human design or gene keys are really focused on the individual and how is it impactful to them personally today, and how can they live their lives out more aligned with who they are, really, truly who they are apart from the conditioning. So we call that process deconditioning, and that's more the focus.
Wow. Wow. April. Oh my gosh, you're like a master at this. I mean, the way you can just rattle it all off and have it all at the top of your head, it's so fascinating.
Well, I'm always
Before
studying. Always studying.
I love it. I love that though.
Thank you.
Before we go, I want you to share with people some of your offerings that you have, like that 8-week course sounds fascinating. And what other kinds of things do you have?
Well, I do both virtual study groups and in-person ones. I have one that's here in my area coming up towards the end of February. I'm with a group right now finishing off the Pearl sequence. But when I'm done with that group, I will probably start another group, and that will be the activation sequence. I'm looking at like April or May for that. That's Gene Keys. As far as getting a human design reading, I do those anytime, all the time. And you get a 23 to 26 page report with that, and you have an hour of my time, and I go over your chart from top to bottom. Sometimes people will say I give them too much information, but I really try to squeeze in as much as I possibly can in that hour. And so that's available. You can find out about that on my website. I have a link tree that is slash April Novoa, all one word, lowercase, that you can go to and find all of my offerings. I'm having podcasts all the time. I write all the time. So I've got a lot of different oars in the water, but I'm always open to doing readings. And I will also announce those virtual classes as soon as I finish up with the Pearl with this last group.
Yeah, everybody go follow April. She is
Thank
amazing.
you.
And I will put your information below for everybody to access. And
Thank
I
you.
am so grateful for your time. Thank you for
Oh,
sharing
my
all this
pleasure.
beautiful information with us today. I
Had a
appreciate
great
it.
time. Thank you, Christine. I appreciate it very
All
much.
right.
Linda Christine. I appreciate it.
All
Bye,
right. We'll
everybody.
say goodbye, everybody. Bye bye.
Bye.